So let's talk about Los Angeles and how I feel a lot of people are looking at the state with rose-tinted glasses. Not everybody, and some people definitely belong here, but I think that a lot of people don't actually know what it's like to live here, so I thought I would kind of jump in and discuss some of the reasons why I actually don't plan on staying here forever. So first of all, the number one thing on the list is one that I'm sure at least some of you have thought of, and it's the cost of living. When you live in Los Angeles, it's not just the rent that is higher than a lot of other places. That means your renter's insurance is higher, your car insurance is higher, the cost of gas is higher. Typical things like new tires, car repairs are also much higher. And I haven't looked into this one, but my assumption is also that public transportation is a higher cost as well. So I think that's a big one to think about, because I don't think a lot of people realize how expensive it is to maintain your mode of transportation. I didn't even talk about registration fees, because those are incredibly high to register your car in California. Get your smog checks done. I know not all states are as strict, or some states might not even have smog check requirements, but that's a big one I think you should really think about, look into, and genuinely look up what the average cost of fees are for the type of vehicle that you have, the type of home you want to have. Do you want to be a homeowner? Do you want to rent? How are the mortgage rates compared to the ones in your state? How many bedrooms and bathrooms do you need? Are you planning on expanding or having a family someday? That might not feel as possible living in this state versus a state where that cost of living is lower. The second one I want to talk about is how many people are in Los Angeles alone. We have millions of people here, and keep in mind the majority of jobs are also in Los Angeles, big cities like San Francisco. You might be thinking about Sacramento. I'm mainly discussing Southern California because that's where I live, but I think it's important to realize how our overpopulation problem really affects us in our day-to-day life, because it's not just when you're going to a large event. It's when you're going to the grocery store and the parking lot is mostly full. You want to go to the nice park nearby your home, and there's a bunch of people there already. There's families, bicyclists, skateboarders, things like that. So I feel like anybody who really, really cherishes their independent time and solitude, I feel like Los Angeles would just not be the best place for you. I feel like maybe an outlying city in California, but most cities in California are going to be more populated than cities you would find in other states. Obviously, I'm not talking about Seattle, I'm not talking about New York City, but you kind of get the gist that if you're coming from anywhere that is not already a Los Angeles, Hollywood, you're kind of going to really see the shock of how many people are here, and it's something that most people have to really get used to. Some people don't get used to it. It's something that quite honestly bothers me a lot of the time, and this video was not intended to be negative in any way, but it's more just an honest look at living in Los Angeles and how I hear a lot of people moving here and they wish they lived here. They're planning on coming here and they don't really have to. Work isn't requiring them to. They could easily travel, but I did want to talk about that. There's a ton of people here and they only keep rolling in, so it's something to think about. Another big thing I want to talk about, and people feel it across the United States, but it's climate change. I feel like the warmer state you live in, the more you've perhaps noticed how hot it actually gets here. So when I first moved here, I can tell you that every October, always on Halloween, we had a ton of rain. It was pouring rain the month of October. We had at least somewhat of a season. As I mentioned, we did get bouts of rain. It never really snowed or anything, but we definitely had a lot of cold months. The end of November, December, into January and February were cold, and then we rolled into spring, and then we of course had a hot California summer that we all love to go to the beach. But that being said, the last few years we don't have a lot of seasons. It has honestly felt like spring and summer all year. Here in Los Angeles, if you lived here, or if you have friends here, you've probably heard some of them talking about how we had maybe 3 cold weeks, and by cold, I mean cool enough that we could put our Ugg boots on without freezing and shivering, or excuse me, sweating, I should say. I mean, putting on the Ugg boots and sweating. But that being said, other than that, it's been hot. I'm actually warm in this incredibly thin sweater that I'm wearing, and it's not even like a zip up or pullover hoodie. I also want to talk about a really important thing. You have to be able to support yourself here. So if you've looked at that cost of living breakdown that I gave you and you've totaled it up and you think that you can afford to live here, I want you to remember that there is a heavy competition for jobs here. There are a lot of people that have trouble getting positions, and they're very talented. Before I went freelance, I had on and off on years where I had trouble finding a job, and I had a ton of experience in marketing, copywriting, PR, the things that I do for a living, And quite honestly, part of the reason for that is overpopulation. People are getting so many applicants that HR can't even see your resume. So if you weren't early to the party, that's already kind of one check mark against you that you might not even get looked at. And even if they do get your resume, someone beat you to it, and for whatever reason it lines up a little more with what they need, and they even live closer. There's all kinds of factors and biases that go into the hiring process that I don't think a lot of people totally realize, but it's something to keep in mind. And again, that goes back into the overpopulation of everything. If there's just thousands and thousands of people going for what you're going after, it makes it so much harder to get a good job. Whereas you could keep your job where you're at, still get one of those amazing positions in your state, and visit here as often as you like. Something to think about. Another thing I want to talk about, speaking of population, is the traffic here. Now, we've all heard about it. Some of you might think that we're just griping and it's not a big deal, but I can tell you right now, when you have a commute somewhere, it takes so much, not just physical energy, but quite honestly, it takes a ton of spiritual energy. If you are sitting in traffic, totally gridlocked, or even if traffic's moving but slowly, I can tell you that you really feel that. You don't want to go to the grocery store after work to go buy groceries. Even if you do grocery delivery, you don't want to fire up the stove and actually cook something because you're tired. You did your 8 or 9 hour day. Then you had to drive home from there in traffic where people might be driving badly, slamming on their brakes, cutting you off, all that kind of stuff. And you had to do it on the way to work before that. So seriously, really think about that. It's not fun, and depending on what industry you live in, you might have to work a 9 to 5 in it, where you're doing that commute. Like I said, I only live 20 minutes from Los Angeles, I would say. But with traffic, it's normally 45 minutes going to work. It can be more. There's a lot of events in Los Angeles people don't realize. All kinds of different things would cause it to be more than an hour to get to work. So you're either constantly having to spend even more time going in early before the time that you can clock in, or you're risking being late, or you're on time, but it was such a stressful drive for you to drive aggressively on the freeway to go ahead and get there. So keep that in mind. Stress really takes something from us. And a big part of the reason I started this channel was to help people not be so stressed and really create the life that they want and be on the journey that they always saw for themselves, so that they feel fulfilled and centered at where they're at. Another thing I want to talk about for any of you out-of-towners watching, the attitude in Los Angeles is incredibly different, and depending on what state you're in is going to depend on how you feel about it. So for example, I have a lot of friends from the East Coast, a lot of them are from New York, or even speak to my clients from New York, and they always say how chilled and relaxed we are in Los Angeles. They can't believe how slow we move in terms of maybe deadlines or things like that. But being someone like me who came from the Pacific Northwest, I can tell you I feel the opposite. When I first came to California, I thought it was ridiculous. It seemed like no one had time for a hello or a wave or time to really chat. Not that I wanted to make someone talk to me for hours on end, but just saying, it's not like when you come from somewhere a little bit smaller and people either already know other people by name or they take the time to speak with them. So keep that in mind. You're getting a little bit less of a personal experience in Los Angeles. We all have to work to really build those relationships here, and when you're in the crazy busy city, you don't just see it every time you leave your front door. So keep it in mind. It's important. That was my main list that I really wanted to go over today. Those are some of the main points that I would say would be on my list for why I am eventually going to leave Los Angeles, and why I think that a lot of people could enjoy the state just visiting. Just come by and go to the amazing museums and food that we have here. Come visit Disneyland. Come visit all those great things, the beach, big city buildings. They might not actually be things you want to live here for. Disneyland is amazing. I'm so big on Disney. But in reality, if you're only able to take a trip like that, unless you're planning on moving right next to Disney, if you can only afford a trip like that or find the time for a trip like that, you're not actually going to be going there very often anyway. And once again, you might as well just go ahead and take the trip here and enjoy a full-on vacation rather than immersing yourself, spending the money every year what it costs to live here and the way our taxes work and things like that. Once again, not meant to be a negative video. It's just here to put everybody's mind kind of at perspective and in reality about living here. If you guys are interested in just videos that go over a few more things with Los Angeles, and my main point in my channel is actually getting everyone to live a little bit better of a life and living a life that they want, considering where they're at and where they want to be, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, because I'm going to have a lot more videos like that soon. Until then though, take care.